to Contemporary Black Voices, where we examine issues surrounding and within the Black community. My name is Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell, and I will sit here as your host. Along with me today are New York Times bestseller Caleb Alexander and community activist as well as entrepreneur Chris Dawkins. Missing today is author and screenwriter Fred Williams. Since Thanksgiving, the Christmas holiday season entered with people bustling from store to store, in some cases moving from one internet site to another, or again, old schooling it, going to the ground stores. For the Black community, there are many of us who celebrate both Christmas and Kwanzaa, or one of the or the other. Of course, the official Christmas season starts the day after Thanksgiving through December 25th. Kwanzaa starts December 26th through January the 1st. Where Christmas is based on religion and biblical texts, Kwanzaa is a 7-day celebration of African culture and history. But there are many who believe that Kwanzaa is a substitute for Christmas, and it's not. So a quick background on Kwanzaa. In the 1960s, following the Watts Rebellion, Malanga Karenga wanted to bring the African American community together in unity in their first fight against oppression. So he created a holiday he based on African harvest festivals, Kwanzaa. So the name Kwanzaa comes from, it's a Swahili name meaning first fruits. Kwanzaa is focused around 7 principles: unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, purpose, creativity, collective, cooperative economics, and faith. So the day show centers around this one question. As African Americans, can we celebrate both and not be sacrificing the purpose of these holidays' respective purposes? So who wants to go first? Give me a look here. You're that.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
You grin, you win.
Uh, no, so I think that we can celebrate. We absolutely can celebrate both. If you and even if you go back and talk about the history of research the history of Christmas in this country, particularly during the time of slavery, you'll find a tradition in our communities where the enslaved workers were allowed to be with their families during Christmas time. So it's always been a time in our community of family. It was a time during a lot of marriages took place traditionally during that area because people were allowed to go and visit and be with their families. They were allowed to eat foods that they weren't normally allowed to eat during the year. So there's a tradition of preparing larger meals and better meals than we normally have. So those are a lot of early Christmas traditions. But it's also another reason to celebrate is that it was also a time of resistance during the Christmas season when they were allowed to visit with each other. There was a lot of planning that took place.
Sure was.
A lot of planning on how to escape and seek their freedom. There was a lot of and then there was a resistance in the form of spiritual resistance because they gave gifts to each other that represented African spirituality. So like a lot of other traditions, they interpose their traditional beliefs over Christian traditional beliefs. And so it was a slight form of resistance where they could maintain their spiritual connections to home. So there are a lot of beautiful traditions, Christmas traditions in our community that we can definitely celebrate. In addition to celebrating Kwanzaa and those seven principles.
Okay. Chris?
I wish my good friend Fred was here. Because there's a lot to unpack here. I am one who probably is the Scrooge of the three of us. I'm not a big fan of Christmas. I do believe that Christmas basically is for kids, but I also believe it's a turning point for us to be able to try to do a better job of telling our kids who Santa Claus is.
Mhm.
I'm the one buying the groceries. I'm the one buying, all the presents and so forth. So I don't want them thinking that there's some white man that's bringing them, some gifts on Christmas. So from that standpoint, that's where I think we make the turn. I think we make that turn to great type of celebrations that we create for ourselves, which deals with the season, okay? And more or less, really, and I know this is going to be controversial, but we deal with the supreme being as opposed to really Jesus. I don't ever see anything, as I read more and more, not only the Bible, but other things, you begin to be able to see, well, where does Jesus talk about, his birthday and when was his birthday? Is this something that the white man in America has kind of gotten us to be, and this is where I talk about Fred, where the capitalism begins to come in, okay? And we are not capitalistic folks. We are only capitalistic from being a part of America. So if we could get back to really teaching our kids, I believe it's a great teaching moment.
Yeah, when I was growing up, now I found all of my parents' hiding spots. You know, I mean, uh, in the bathroom was this big pull-out, dirty clothes basket. I did a deep dive in that and found everything. Put, play with stuff. Uh, After my two cousins died, one of the things I really loved playing with was one of their Barbie doll houses. So those toys were passed down to us, and so a lot of times we're spending money buying new stuff when you can pass things down. Keep it in the family type stuff.
Which could be a tradition that
Mhm.
that we end up doing as opposed to the other thing. And I want to say this to piggyback on what you were saying. One of the worst days in my life, man, is when I hid behind the tree and they were
Bring it out the gifts.
they was bringing out the gift.
That's why you were Scrooge.
Yeah,
You found it.
yeah. Oh man, it was I thought I was trying to be good and figure out what it was, but it ruined my life.
But you know what, no, Chris, I do want to unpack that. So let me ask. Let's just a little bit deeper dive into that though. So are we doing our kids a disservice uh, by not teaching them savings and sacrifice and letting them know that, hey, mom and daddy really did buy this, you know what I mean? And so, or do we let kids be kids? So there's two sides to that coin. So
I think we kind of do both. We do let kids be kids, but we do need to have a tradition where we're not lying to our kids. We don't begin doing that from the very beginning. The Santa Claus and
right.
the Tooth Fairy and all that kind of stuff, man. We need to get back to our principles, and I think as we become more aware of ourselves, those type of things are beginning to happen.
Well, I know one of the things we're seeing more and more on the internet, especially on Facebook, and I love it, are the Black Santas. We need our own, if we're going to be doing this, we need our own representations, right? And so I'm glad to see that there are Black Santas out there so that kids can see that image versus this old white man and thinking that he's the one that's giving them all this joy when it could be a Black man representing the parent, giving the joy.
You know what was real interesting? I went to my doctor's office and I walk into the waiting room, and they're Hispanic and white, but they had a Black Santa and a white Santa, and they had both of them in the room, and I thought that was
together.
Yeah, and
so the kids are not saying, "Well, who's the real Santa?"
Right? No, but because I think we end up putting too much thought into it. When the kids see the boat, I don't think that they go to that. Okay, at that particular point in time.
Kids these days, they're gonna wonder, well, which one of you is real? Because I need my lipstick. They want to make sure they get it into the right person. So, but no.
So what would you say?
No, I mean that's a good question because I'm wondering, like, do we take? Is that by taking those things away? You know what I mean? On the one hand, I can see both sides. I can see, you know what? Hey, mommy and daddy worked hard for this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, no, there's not a fairy sticking his money under your
Right.
pillow, or no, there's not, there's not somebody that's coming down the chimney to bring you these things. And so, we had to save. And so you have the opportunity. It's a teaching moment that you have to save, and you teaching kids economics.
Mm-hmm.
But do you take away? Does that take away the magic of childhood? And so that's the other side of that coin. And so I mean it's a great debate, and I like to hear both sides of it. But what do you, Doc? What do you?
Well, one of the things that, coming from a Christian home,
Mm-hmm.
we do stress the birth of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you guys on YouTube gonna think I'm going totally on left field on this one, but I had this conversation with my mother and sister the other day. Well, first of all, the Epiphany.
Okay.
This is when the three kings show up. Well, if you look at every nativity scene, you've got Mary,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph, the little drummer boy, a couple of shepherds, and these three kings.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a true image of what happened. In fact, the three kings didn't show up
Right.
until he was around 2 or 3 years
Right.
old.
Right. Right.
And so, and then I asked my mother, and where were the women, other women in the group, right? Because you got this young woman,
Mm-hmm.
having this baby, and because it was a Muslim type of, family, no man was supposed to, be in there with her. So I said, well, what about the innkeeper? Now, the innkeeper was a man. He was the one that said, no, we ain't got no room in the inn,
Mm-hmm.
but we got the stable.
Mm-hmm.
So the innkeeper was probably married to, Mrs. Innkeeper.
Right.
And I believe that Mrs. Innkeeper was probably a midwife.
Uh-huh.
So you've got pieces of the story missing, but the big piece is the fact that those three kings did not show up. So the center story is what you focus on,
Mm-hmm.
is that we celebrate Christmas because of the birth of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think that we need to be honest with the purpose of why we're doing Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to also help kids understand that these are gifts that, because we're talking about Christ, I want to give you a gift as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's anything wrong or owning up saying, now, it's going to take me a moment to get you that car, but I'll get you a car for Christmas. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and take a break and talk about Kwanzaa.
Mm-hmm.